All right, which part do you want to start with there? The Dillon Gabriel catching eyes in camp? No jokes, he's short. Or the processing speed and whatnot?
I think the processing speed, because it kind of wraps into Dillon Gabriel anyway. When you say they need to run the offense, minimize mistakes, make good decisions, listen, I don't know if that's Dillon Gabriel. That does sound more like what they think Kenny Pickett is, though. It does sound a lot more like maybe what Shedeur Sanders could be. It doesn't sound a lot like Joe Flacco, though, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, make good decisions. Joe makes some good decisions. He's not Jameis Winston. I mean, they're cut from the same cloth of just no risky, no bisky.
They're Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah. I mean, Jameis is just the all-time that. I mean, I just have never watched a quarterback like I used to think Brett Favre was the ultimate no risky, no bisky quarterback, and then I saw Jameis, and I'm like, that's poetry in motion.
And Favre he was just a gunslinger is all it turned out to really be. I mean, he threw a lot of interceptions, obviously.
Amongst other things.
Yeah.
Wasn't the only thing he slung.
Whoa.
Too soon?
No, never really too soon. Quiet times in the Favre household these days. Anyway. Yeah, thank you for that. The point is that this is the opposite of describing Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the processing speed is like the thing that we probably don't give Joe enough credit for. At this point, I think he could roll out of bed, read a defense, and throw a 40-yard pass on a dime.
Okay, but if you give me three things and two of them is minimize mistakes and make good decisions, that's not Joe Flacco.
Yeah, but one of the three things is now the point is it does sound like Kenny Pickett or it does sound like Dillon Gabriel. And when you then go at the second half of the clip where she goes, some of the things that Dillon Gabriel has caught their eye on are his decision-making and his processing speed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it already felt like, okay, if we dissect the two battles, it already felt like Dillon Gabriel had the, not just leg up because he was drafted first, but because I think he's got the Kevin stamp of approval. Yeah, this does feel like a triple stamp of approval. There's like, hey, that Dillon Gabriel really stood out for the things that we drafted him for. Also think it might be another way, depending on how you look at it, of trying to sniff your own gas, as it were, of like, hey, just so you know, we drafted him for this reason, and we're already seeing it from him.
Yeah, and that might be part of that. And I wonder a lot of this and a lot of the conversations are them trying to do exactly what you're describing there, where they're just trying to make themselves feel good about trading capital for Kenny Pickett and then obviously drafting, Dillon Gabriel. If you're Joe Flacco, how do you take this in?
I just think it's okay. So I actually think it's more interesting from the Kenny Pickett scenario because
this fits Pickett. Like if I hear this, I like this if I'm Pickett.
Yeah, but I think the point is the Kenny Pickett was drafted for a multitude of reasons. A little bit where the intangible stuff that then the only thing he really showed in Pittsburgh was how to avoid interceptions but not make big plays. Like he made good decisions also means, hey, when there's a huge throw down the field, you have to make it and ace it, which touchdowns were the biggest issue with him. I kind of feel like you could get market corrected if you're Kenny Pickett because of Dillon Gabriel's ability to read do everything Kevin Stefanski wants you to, shut up, read the defense, and deliver the ball on time. And then you can get market corrected by Joe Flacco because he does the intangible stuff, meaning like reading the defense better than you, and he might actually complete more than a 20-yard pass this year.
I don't know. I'm just looking at it from the perspective of if I'm trying to find somebody like per this description, then I think they're making it pretty obvious. And if I'm Joe Flacco, I'm not pleased this is how this is going. But if I'm Kenny Pickett, I'm thinking they're telling me I'm in the driver's seat.
Oh, I think this is much more about Dillon. I don't think it's a coincidence that Dillon was tagged on there at the end. I don't know what Kevin Stefanski's into, but I do know he loves diminutive quarterbacks that shut up and do what he says.
Okay.
And I think
everyone's got their kink. You know what I mean?
Hey,
everyone's got their thing.
We don't shame here on this show. That's not the kind of show we are.
No, we don't kink shame.
I mean, I've worried for a minute that it wouldn't be a truly like an intellectually honest quarterback conversation because of Kevin Stefanski's love of Kenny Pickett and his true love, like the excitement around Dillon Gabriel. Listen, at least with Kenny, I can discount it as, well, he fits the system, but he's also the most likely quarterback to be traded, in my opinion, before the regular season. With Dillon, there's no way out. Like if Dillon, I mean, there's a big part of me that thinks if Dillon's up to speed, I think he can be 95% of the way there and he'll be the starter week one, whereas I think Shedeur has to be 110% of the way there to even enter the equation of starting week 1.
I mean, I just think that Stefanski's big takeaway from last year was throwing interceptions where they led the league in picks. Not good for making productive football.
So it is
like our offense is always gonna stall when you throw that many interceptions.
So all right, interceptions are bad. I don't know.
And maybe this is them course correcting a little bit too hard and too far.
So that's kind of where I am with this. Is it's like, there are just so many ways. Like there's so many quarterbacks out there that you can get that will protect the football. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have to go with a guy who's the biggest flaw with Kenny Pickett is he just doesn't throw enough touchdown type plays. He's just not enough of a down the field passer. So like there's a part of me that's like, okay, did we go too far in the name of we don't want to be Jameis Winston? And it's like there's 100 quarterbacks in the NFL that you could have had that aren't Jameis Winston. Like I don't think you should overly react to last year in the quarterback battle. Other than, do you fit the system and can you throw the ball down the field enough to make good enough plays, even though that there's a risk there? That to me is Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I don't think it's an accident that they've spent the offseason and then all these insiders and everyone around them just keeps preaching the idea that they just turned the ball over too much last year. That was a big time problem. And I just think that's coming from them. Like the message inside Berea is we cannot turn the ball over the way that they did if we want to be competitive.
And I think you are 100% right. Okay. It reminds me of when Ron Rivera got hired in Washington. And mind you, Ron was coach of the year, entrenched in Carolina, and then Cam had back-to-back injuries. It was the shoulder injury twice.
You liked Ron
and then
a lot,
it was
right? That was your guy.
Yeah, I mean, I liked him until he did what he did in Washington. I still like him personally, by the way. But then Cam had a foot injury. And those 3 injuries across 3 seasons were enough to get Ron fired because, hey, you can't win without Cam Newton. So his reaction was, we're going to quarterback proof the roster. And that first year, he had Justin Herbert or Tua Tagovailoa on the dais there, and they chose Chase Young. And I remember Ron saying, we got to quarterback proof this thing before we. It's like, no, you have to go get a quarterback.
You have to get a quarterback. That's one of the dumbest overcorrections you could possibly have.
I kind of feel like this is like, okay.
Unless you just thought he was Tomlin all of a sudden for some reason.
Logically, I understand interceptions are bad. Interceptions with Jameis were a huge thing that sunk you in the second half of the season. At the same point, there's got to be like checks and balances of, okay, he doesn't turn the ball over. He also isn't capable of either seeing over the offensive line like Dillon Gabriel or delivering the ball consistently down the field.
Well, there's a difference, right? Like Baker and Kirk Cousins tied for the league in interceptions last year, right? And it's like, but what did Baker do? Baker also threw for 40-plus touchdowns last season. Yeah. Like you have to be able to balance it out a little bit. That's why like touchdown to interception ratio is a thing that we look at. And that's a problem with Kenny Pickett. His isn't very good.
I'm trying very hard not to lean into confirmation bias because I do think that can happen a little easy here. So I'm trying to leave the door open here. But if I came into this summer concerned that the books could be cooked, as it were, for Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel, specifically Dillon Gabriel, who I don't even think he's an NFL quarterback. I think he is a NFL backup, third stringer on most teams kind of talent.
Every draft pundit agreed with you.
Yes. So I'm not really stepping on a limb there, but I was already very, very, very gun shy about the idea of, hey, you have to. No, not it'd be nice if you not, boy, wouldn't it be fun if you have to, for this thing to work out in any way over the next 2 years, you have to run an intellectually honest quarterback battle. And so the first thing that I hear from Judy Batista, which sure leans into the idea of these guys have a leg up, and it's the 2 guys that I have the least amount of belief in, 2 guys that I think give you the least amount of upside. Yeah, I'm clenching a little bit here. Very excited for the season. If the worst thing that happens is Pickett or Gabriel starts, well, then we'll get through it, guys. We're a team, right? We can do this.
Yeah, we'll be here week in, week out regardless.
But if this thing isn't intellectually honest, I think Kevin's going to shoot himself in the foot, go full Plaxico Burress with his team.
To him, it would be intellectually honest. It would be him trying to course correct, as we discussed. And so, it's like in his eyes, he's thinking, I messed up here last year. This is a different way of doing it. It's just he needs to take a further look at this, and he needs to take a step back and say, is this actually right? Like when I sounded out, Kenny Pickett's going to save my job. Does that make sense to me? Dillon Gabriel's going to save my job. Does that make sense to me? Because it doesn't make sense to anybody listening.
So, and here's the thing. The reason when we intellectually honest quarterback competition, four-way quarterback competition, isn't about Nick Wilson. It's not about Jonathan Peterlin. It's not about Mac Robinson. It's not about Jake Murren. It's not about anybody at this station, the morning boys, midday boys, anybody, Jake at night. It's not about anybody but that locker room. And if you don't, and listen, this season can be DOA, dead on arrival, for a myriad of reasons. It cannot die on the vine before it has a chance, because Kevin had some idea in his head about who the starting quarterback should be. Because if you do it right, and I know we've not seen a lot of doing it right, but if you do it right, the locker room will tell you. And if you that ultimately, like the locker room, yeah, they might love Joe. Some guys might love Shedeur. Some guys might like Kenny Pickett or this, that, the other. They might like any.
Well, they know. Ultimately, they know. Well, I always think about this with NBA players. NBA players are awesome to talk to because they know who can play and who can't play.
Well, and that's the point. That it doesn't matter if whomever the starting quarterback passes Kevin's test or Andrew Berry's test. It is, do they pass the locker room's test? And it matters even more in the wake of the Deshaun situation, where last year you could tell those guys stopped believing in Deshaun, and he continued to be out there, and it was demoralizing for those guys.
And there was a segment of that team that before the season even got underway knew that you were drawing dead if Deshaun was going to be your quarterback.
It's interesting. As we start camp, it sure feels like your guy Shedeur is left in the wake here.
It does feel that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't love the feeling, but it definitely does feel that way, which is funny because nothing has really changed, and just where nothing has happened, all of a sudden his momentum has just kind of died, and I think that's really interesting.
Well, what's wild is today we hear Judy Batista on NFL Network, or over the weekend we hear her say he did some things the Browns really like in mini camps and kind of OTAs, and that was not anywhere to be heard during actual mini camps or OTAs.
Yeah, I would have liked to have heard that during mini camps and OTAs.
Because we heard about Shedeur, all right? I'm trying to think of who else we heard kind of popped in practice. And granted, there were days where Shedeur looked better than the other, and a couple times he looked like a rookie. But I really hadn't heard too much hype on Dillon Gabriel or Kenny Pickett actually during OTAs and minicamp.
No, not at all. If anything, I left those two parts of the season thinking Joe Flacco clearly looked like the best quarterback out of the bunch, as he should. He's 40 years old, but he played in the NFL for 18 years. And then it looked like Shedeur was the second best.
As we wait to see, will Kevin Stefanski and the Browns have an open mind in the four-headed quarterback battle? Ryan Clark, former Pittsburgh Steeler, although we don't hold it against him because he's a professional gentleman there. He was on First Take this morning and basically got into the idea of how well Shedeur will have to play this season.
Shedeur Sanders has to play like a first rounder. He can't play like Caleb Williams played last year. Shedeur Sanders is going to have to give you Michael Penix Jr. He's going to have to give you Bo Nix so you could see a future, because if you do draft high enough and something is tantalizing enough at the top of that draft, you'll still move on from him if he gives you adequate play. And we are saying all of this with the expectation that he actually starts at some point this season.
I think it's a great point, by the way.
No.
I think that's what Shedeur lost that maybe even Shedeur's camp hasn't recognized yet. When you go to the fifth round, you don't have any flexibility. There's no leniency attached to that. When you go to the fifth round, you don't have a million games to figure it out. You have to be awesome right out of the gate. There's no growing pains. You have to be great when given your opportunity.
And that's, by the way, that's talking about the in-season. I think for him to even get the chance in-season to show that he can play like a first-round pick, I think he needs to do everything behind the scenes like a first-round pick.
For sure. He's got to be basically flawless the entire stretch of the way. And it made it a lot harder for him. It's the realization that I think is yet to come for him, that maybe he's picked it up. Maybe that's why he's working so hard right now. Why you see all these reports of him working so hard is like he knows he's got to be hitting the ground running, and that's it. You can't be what Caleb Williams was last year. Not even close.
I think for Dillon Gabriel, I think it's a relatively unforgiving path, because you have two veterans ahead of you. You are a third-round pick. You have some physical limitations. And, oh, by the way, there is a ticking time limit of this might be the only season you get to show that you can be an NFL quarterback and be given a chance to start. You might always have a chance to battle, but you've got as clear of a shot as anything given the other quarterbacks around you. That's the guy that they love.
Yeah,
that's the guy that Kevin Stefanski went damn near Howard Dean when we got Gabriel, right? And that's how I feel about, I think, the chosen one in the quarterback room. I mean, flawless might even be a better word than just he has to play like a first rounder this season. Like he has to, he can't have one false note where even something like the speeding ticket was something that you wondered, could that hold back? Because they seem to have a hard spot of like, no, you need to be flawless if you're Shedeur.
Well, and so we talked about where that momentum had maybe died down a little bit. And I think momentum in general for the 6 weeks, it is what it is. But I think after that speeding ticket, you saw he just kind of went away for a couple weeks. And then he came back now and he's doing the KFC drive-through stuff and he's having fun again. And he's doing all these other things that keep the ride going. But he had to temper that down because for a little bit, anytime he was doing any of that stuff, it was just brought up, hey, why don't you drive the speed limit first and then we can have a conversation, which is a little unfair.
Oh, see, what's interesting is I think the Browns and how they've talked about Shedeur to even the local or national media, I think the Browns played a great, and in a way, I think it did Shedeur dirty because I don't think this is true. So they're telling a narrative to help serve them for some way that we can't readily see. But they got a lot of people to buy hook, line, and sinker. He's not NFL ready, that he's a project. And granted, there are things he will have to do in the NFL that he didn't do at college. You just described like 99% of the kids coming in the NFL, and most of them don't have 40 career starts next to their name.
So the hard part, and this is the kind of the confusing part too, is that the message was, it wasn't really about his arm or anything like that, because we see that. We watch that. You heard Nathan 40 minutes ago on with us. Is like, that's an NFL talent right there, NFL-ready arm. But somehow they made it all about whether or not he could pick up the verbiage and whether he could pick up the language and whether or not he could operate an NFL offense, which is just so wild to me that they turned it into that when Dillon Gabriel doesn't have that same discussion.
It's okay, but this is the thing.
No, that's the point. It's all their directive.
You know me. I am Switzerland. All right. I'm excited the kid's here. I actually really love who he's showing himself to be in the community in a way that I begged for that for 3 years from Deshaun Watson and never got it. A kid in a 5th round contract is giving you that now.
Yeah, like, great, Deshaun, you opened a cheesesteak spot. We saw you for 3 seconds.
And so
that was it.
But there is a point where it's like, all right, the Browns are, I've accused them of trying to tamp down the hype on Shedeur. I think other people have put it like, oh, no, they're trying to foster an environment of learning. And the reality is no one else is getting that at the quarterback position. Everyone else has kind of just got a scot-free, like, show me what you got. And so I think, like, we talk about, like, did the momentum stop? Well, yeah, the Browns went around for 6 weeks telling everyone he's a developmental quarterback, which no one was saying in the draft process. This is where I do feel like I'm not meaning this literally, but it's a bit of gaslighting of like, hey, no one said he was a developmental quarterback. And by the way, they're all developmental quarterbacks, but nobody said he was a developmental quarterback. His readiness for the NFL was such a huge standing point on him being drafted in the first damn place.
Right. Well, especially since if you look at like Dillon Gabriel, for instance, like he's having to change entire systems, entire everything. Shedeur had a million different NFL people on that staff at Colorado. He had all sorts of different people teaching him all sorts of things. The part, if we didn't have another rookie quarterback to compare him to, then I'd be like, all right, fine, whatever. You don't think he's ready for the quarterback. Maybe you have impossible standards as far as the language is concerned. But the fact that when we compare him to another rookie quarterback and the other rookie quarterback doesn't get these same criticisms just weeks into this, it doesn't feel right to me.
And I don't know about you, and we'll get into, I'm going to save the Gabriel versus Shedeur thing when we bring back the Judy Batista sound in about 10 minutes, because I do want to get back just to the Shedeur side of things. The reason why I get a little outraged when it does feel like, hey, everyone took their foot off the gas, and now all of a sudden, we got Daryl in the morning show saying, I don't need to see either of the rookies this year. It's like, okay, the Browns should not operate going into this season in a one-year silo. But there's a lot of circumstances where that will become the case. And whether it's Shedeur, Dillon, Kenny Pickett, any one of those three dudes has to play like a first-round pick this year. Because if they play like a third-round pick, you should be drafting a top 3 pick quarterback next year.
Right. No
excuses. So that's the other part of what Ryan said. But I don't just put that simply to Shedeur. If Dillon starts week 1, or if Dillon gets the first bite of the apple in week 7 or week 10 or whatever, he's going to have to be a first-round pick level talent. You're going to have to see. If he's Russell Wilson in his rookie year, No. You're probably going to have a top 3 pick, and you should take the quarterback. If he is Kirk Cousins in any of his first 3 years, okay, yeah, that's nice. You're functional. We're going to go ahead and take a quarterback. And that does, if it feels like there's no margin for error for either quarterback, it is designed that way because the initial plan was, we're just going to take a flyer on a quarterback and we're going to get our quarterback in a year.
Yeah, I mean, this is on
just
Shedeur.
Drafting 2 of them hasn't changed that.
It's on Shedeur and Dillon. They have to blow the Browns coaching staff away. Like that's the whole idea of all this. And but it does suck because their leniency here is basically non-existent. I can recognize how hard of a spot that is, while also recognizing. I was thinking earlier today. I read one of the previews for the Texans this upcoming season earlier today, and they kept talking about how C.J. Stroud in year 1 was obviously awesome and he was great right away. But why did he suck last year in year 2? It was the offensive line that was just abysmal. It didn't have a chance. They had the 26th, 27th best offensive line in the entire game. Well, look up what the Browns are projected to be offensive line-wise this year. You have great quarterbacks that struggle with the offensive line and still have problems. Like, they're going to have to overcome, look awesome, while still having problems that would sink other actually good competitive quarterbacks. But this is where you have to show yourself.
Well, and I think that's like when I get excited, the possibility of either rookie quarterback or kind of establishing themselves, that is what excites me, is for them to do it. They will have to overcome so much that you're going to be able to look at that and go, that was truly impressive. Whether you draft a quarterback next year or not, starting week 1, Shedeur's going to have to come over however the organization views him internally and the limitations they've put on him, not that he's put on. With Dillon Gabriel, he's going to have to overcome two more experienced quarterbacks, and both guys, maybe not arm talent-wise with Pickett, but both guys have more physical talent or bigger than them. Those are Herculean things just week 1.
Right.
And even if week 7 is like the first spot you see him, you're still going to go, all right, are they here because you drafted them, or are they just here because either Joe Flacco and or Kenny Pickett were the pits, and it's time to see what you have in them? That's a lot to overcome. Now, where I differ from you is I don't like double standards between Gabriel and Shedeur. That being said, I have no problem with the zero-sum game of it doesn't matter if you're ready, doesn't matter if we like it, doesn't matter what. No, get your ass out there and perform. There's a part of me that likes that because it can be frustrating. Like in Chicago, you're already making excuses for Caleb Williams going into year 1 or going into year 2. Well, sure, he said that stuff about Chicago, but he didn't mean it. Well, but the offensive line was bad last year, but this was bad, but we got a new head coach. 6 games into the season, that could turn into you're still making excuses for a guy. And then you go to the Anthony Richardson thing if you're 3 years into it and you still don't know where the hell you are.
Might happen. I think a lot of people got burned in their projections of the Bears the prior season. And so that's why they're like, you notice there's a tempered expectation for the Bears. They were 15th overall in the rankings, by the way, that ESPN put out earlier today as far as a total team. But this isn't about Caleb Williams. This is more about the idea that when it comes to Shedeur, when it comes to Dillon Gabriel, they don't have to do a lot. And you're right in that I do protect them for week 1. I just do. I think the first 6 weeks of the schedule is so hard that you're going to look bad. And if the idea is you have to blow us out of the water, I just think you're behind the 8 ball in such a large way.
This to me, it's about where you finish with that, not where you start.
Well, but are you going to give them the chance to then have enough games past those first 6?
But to me, it is don't care. Go out and play. If you distinguish yourself as the best player, I don't want to see any other quarterback other than Shedeur or Dillon if that's the best player. Is it hard? Yeah, it's the NFL. The whole thing's hard. Okay,
but then we want to be able to judge him on this curve, right? Like at least a realistic curve.
Early, yes, but by the end of the season, I need to see that growth.
Listen, I told you this before, though. If you told me you like promise sign on the dotted line, you get all 17 games with Shedeur Sanders, then yes, throw him out there week 1. I'll gladly watch that. And I'll watch the development as it goes. I've just seen how this ownership operates. I've seen how this front office operates. And I just don't trust them to say after week 6, when they're 1-5, oh, yeah, we like the growth. Let's keep growing. I just don't see that as plausible.
Well, Judy Batista was on the NFL Network this weekend and gave her thoughts on and maybe a little bit of information here on the Browns quarterback situation.
They're going to value processing time, decision-making, that kind of thing. They want somebody who's going to be able to run the offense, minimize mistakes, make good decisions, things like that. They use those words a lot, processing speed and decision making. If you're looking at the quarterback competition, it's really two quarterback competitions, the competition between the two rookies and then the competition between the two veterans. Certainly, I think at this early point, you would say Joe Flacco has to have the edge just because he's been there and won there. And then I think you keep an eye on Dillon Gabriel, who I think caught some eyes in the spring with how quickly he was absorbing information.
So it felt like, the Joe's got the leg up. Sure felt like that was about the other quarterbacks not named Joe.
Yeah, having Dillon Gabriel all of a sudden have a leg up in this competition has been a wild development. Didn't see this one on my bingo sheet.
I don't want to say it was my worst fear, because in the end, my biggest hope is that the right guy gets the job. But yeah, I mean, I think it is probably more rigged, meaning I think Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett have the shortest path to the starting quarterback job than even Joe, who I think his job is just to wait till somebody screws it up.
What happened to all of our draft pundits that were telling everyone that Dillon Gabriel was a 6th or a 7th round pick? Aren't those guys supposed to come out of the shadows? Or maybe they're just already projecting the 2026 class, so they're just too far behind them. Aren't they supposed to come out and be like, you guys can't be serious right now with the Dillon Gabriel conversation?
I just think I think there's already been baked in excuses. Oh, no. It's a mid-round quarterback, and there's really no difference between the 3rd round and the 6th round anymore, all of which I think is hooey. But I do think they've already been offered up those excuses.
I think it's wild. And I'm not the hard part I have about the upcoming couple weeks here is that we're probably going to do every single week somebody new becomes the flavor of the week. And it's just going to be what the national media then latch on to. And then it just becomes this trickle down until we ultimately get to the conclusion that I think we'll get to, which is Joe Flacco starting week 1.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's more fluid than that. I mean, again, you know me. My first thing would be I'm going to give Joe this chance, or I just choose the best of the rookies. Those would be the two most interesting things to me to start the season. But I would probably just lean in the guise of I think unless somebody really takes this job, Joe's going to get the vets to feel the best way going into this season, and that might give them the best chance to supersede expectations or at least succeed. But man, I just worry that it's not a true quarterback competition and that everyone's kind of graded on a different curve. And I do think that makes this whole thing even harder, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It is enough to try and two quarterbacks is enough of a quarterback competition that is tough enough to get right. And then you add 2 more quarterbacks and 2 rookies and a hasn't been yet, and then potentially washed quarterback. There's just a lot of elements you're playing with here, trying to let this play out. I mean, it's then all of a sudden, this guy, you really don't have to do 35% of what this guy's got to do. It's kind of exhausting just to kind of think about all the kind of different ways they could screw this up, and the way that it already feels like it's tilted in one direction.
Which is why it still seems odd that they're going to take this thing down to 4 quarterbacks and do this the whole entire camp. I think about how exhausting it is for us to even have conversations where we talk about the pros and the cons and we go all through it. It takes us 7 minutes to get through every one of these quarterbacks and talking about them in any sort of way.
But if you do it the right way, where there actually is this week it's Joe Flacco, and then next week it's Shedeur, and this day it's Kenny Pickett, and this day if you actually do it the right way, it's the only way you can land this plane and get this thing off on the best foot. Your only real hope to really surprise people is if you go 3-3 or better in the first 6 games of the season.
Yeah.
And the only way that's accomplished is if you nail the quarterback decision in a way that the locker room knows it wasn't funny money.
Sure. I just hope they have enough time to go ahead and be able to give each of these quarterbacks a true chance and to be able to actually have them develop, because I'm worried that Stefanski will spend so much of his time split among all 4 that you end up really not dedicated to any.